I suddenly just got very nervous.
Good. Just where we want you. Becca C.
'Tis I.
How do you be?
I'm good, Short John. I'm very good.
Ooh, okay. It's going to be one of those.
It's not nervous anymore.
Yeah, no, very confident at this point in time.
Wowee.
Saying you're nervous was a joke, right?
Yeah, I rarely get nervous.
Wow. Intimidating.
I'm glad we're 12 feet apart.
Yes.
I am also glad we're 12 feet apart because not for the virus thing, just I am not sure how often you two shower.
Fair.
You eat a lot of pizza.
It's true.
Well, thanks for coming on today, Becca C. We're happy to have you.
I'm so glad to be here.
We've been asking / begging you for 8 months now to come on, week after week after week. What about this week made you want to join us?
You know, I think that is totally true statement that you have indeed been begging me and not the other way around, because that would just seem pathetic, you know.
Yes,
so
it would, hypothetically.
I think this week what was different was that the ask was reciprocated. Mutually exclusive ask.
And why did we ever think to do this in the first place?
Why did we think to ask me on to the podcast?
Yes.
Well, I am cooler, Becca, so I just assumed you wanted to infuse some coolness into this podcast because it's viewed by very few people.
Agree.
Yeah.
Spot on. Sheesh.
Hopefully you watch it.
I do watch it because it makes me laugh hysterically.
Well,
not to give you guys big ego heads, but
once upon a time, we were sitting at the boardwalk patio. It was you, it was John, it was myself, it was Greta Salewski, it was Catherine Kester.
Yes.
Was that the group for the day?
That was the group for the day.
It was a fun little meal. We brought up an interesting topic. It was, how do you know when you're an expert at something? And obviously, a lot of the people at the table, all of them female, have a lot of skills. And so it became an interesting point of conversation for John and I. But the validation component of being an expert was interesting. Why don't you start by introducing what you do for a living and why, and then let's get into why you are qualified for the job and why you are continuously qualified for the job. And you've had some additional responsibilities since you started with where you're currently at, right?
So I have 3 jobs right now. Do you want me to talk about all of them? Just one of them?
All of them.
Okay, great. Perfect.
Real lily pad. Go right across them.
Oh, that's what that means. I was like, you want me to sink as I'm stepping on it, or I don't.
No, not that.
Not
my
that.
My goal was to make Paul crack during this video. So usually he has such a straight face. So, currently I work at the Grand Forks Region Economic Development Corporation as their workforce development coordinator. I run the Greater Grand Forks Way Cooler Than You Think website and social media accounts. And I love it because Grand Forks really is way cooler than you think. I moved here 8 years ago, and the first year it sucked, but then I realized how cool it really was in all ways, shapes, and forms. And then my second job, I work as a crisis line advocate for the Community Violence Intervention Center, CVIC. And I've worked there for just about as long as I've been in Grand Forks. And I do all of the crisis line calls and respond to emergency room visits for sexual assaults and domestic violence assaults after hours. And then also I own my own business. It's called Damsel of Distress. It's a mixed media art company and papercraft company. So that's
Check it out.
Can we roll some B-roll of some of her work? Whoever's editing this. Just one picture.
Sure.
Want to send us a picture?
Yeah, there's a good one in the Herald.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Sweet.
So, all those things said, obviously the middle one would be an interesting one to be an expert at, whether you're a victim of abuse or someone who has become an expert at helping others. That's a very, very important subject altogether. But in general, any initial thoughts on the point at which you're able to say, at my job, I am the expert on X?
I think it's really hard to know when you're an expert on something. At what point do you just say, self-proclaimed, I'm an expert at XYZ?
That's what you do, right?
Pretty much, I think if you say it often enough, people will start to believe it, and then you actually become it. So that's
fake it till you make it.
Right, you just proclaim it, and all of the sudden your self-proclamations become the town crier's proclamations, become really proclaimed by the Wall Street Journal over and over again.
Wow. Where was your transition? When was it no longer faking? When it was making?
Well, I think everybody always fakes it, no matter what level of expertise you have in something.
I agree with that.
I think you always have something to learn on a topic. There's probably somebody who's doing it better than you. I don't know. Maybe Bill Gates was at one point in time the expert on the internet, but I bet there are people who have surpassed him in that now.
But there can also be multiple experts on one topic.
Right. So there's probably different levels of experts, and saying that you're an expert can be true even if you're a beginning level expert.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say for like your role in workforce, if you had to write a biography for someone doing a speech on workforce development, what does their biography have to include for them to be considered an expert?
I think you'd have to be able to understand the statistics behind workforce. For example, the unemployment rate, is pretty easy to understand, but then also talking about what are your labor markets? What's your available labor pool in a given area? How does that stack up against other areas of the country? Also, you'd probably have to talk about educational alignment. So you can have a big pool of workforce in X field, but if you need workforce in your area in Y field, it doesn't matter that all this workforce is prepared in X field, because you don't have the workforce you need. So that would be another one.
That's actually really interesting. Wow.
That is.
Yeah. How have you benefited from other experts? And you could name drop if you wanted to, but I feel like you said, constant learning is one sign of an expert. The more you know, the less you know. How have some other experts, I don't know, made themselves known to you, or how have you been able to utilize their talents and knowledge?
Is this the point where I plug Twin Tandem Studios?
No.
Is that what we're doing here? Because I can be part of that. All right. So
No.
we're doing it.
No, I don't get it.
Watch.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'll connect the dots for you.
You're the expert.
Ready?
Ready.
I'll plug Twin Tandem Studios and add leg. Both of you. So part of...
I don't want to do this. Can you do something more like workforce?
It is workforce. It's recruitment from outside. I don't know how to make recruitment videos. You guys do. Add leg. Okay, I'll do something else.
Okay.
I can tell you're uncomfortable talking about your own expertise.
We want to hear.
It's not what this is about, Becca C.
Yeah. Okay.
We appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Right. So
we're trying to learn.
Yeah.
We already know
how
what our
great
level of
experts
ability is
on ourselves already.
Yeah, something like that.
Give us something fresh.
Okay, so I will talk about maybe my compatriots over at Job Service North Dakota. So we recently hosted a major company who's looking at Grand Forks to develop a new plant site. And I can't tell you more than that. It's top secret.
Sure.
Yeah,
Thanks for giving us that much.
I know. I probably shouldn't.
Plants.
Might
Deals
get
with
fired.
plants.
Plants. And they were evaluating Grand Forks, three other communities, and they wanted to know all about our labor markets, where we're pulling people from, where people are migrating to, what is the area that people are driving so that they know what cities they can pull from. They wanted to know all about educational attainment. So for each position that they're hiring, and they have it stated, they want to hire X worker and Y worker and C worker, and they all have to have a certain educational attainment. How many people in Grand Forks County have bachelor's degrees? How many people have master's degrees? So relying on Job Service to pull all those numbers for me, and then relying on Praxis Strategy Group to really break down and say what is the migration of workers in versus the migration of workers out, what counties are they coming from, what counties are they going to. They can tell all that by census data and things like that.
So, complete 180.
Yeah.
How about your work at CVIC?
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself an expert?
I think I would consider myself an expert, self-proclaimed. I mean, I do feel like there are certainly things that I have yet to learn in that field, many, many, many things. What I know about one population, you can learn about other populations and things like that as well. But yeah, 8 years doing a job probably has brought my knowledge level significantly higher. And then, too, I think, just expertise comes in many different forms as well. Not a lot of people might know this about me, but I am actually a domestic violence survivor. And I've been in Grand Forks now for 8 years. And I've told my story to a few people, but not a lot of people might realize it.
Sure.
So, yeah. I'd say that definitely makes my expertise well-rounded in that subject.
So, for better or worse, you're able to empathize a lot more with a lot of these callers. Would you say that, there's probably no situation just like the other, but is there some repetitiveness, unfortunately, with people calling for help?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. When I started 8 years ago, I started as a volunteer, and now they've really more done away with the volunteer roles. And about 4 years ago, they made us paid people, which is nice, but it's not really why any of us do it, because we get paid, $3 an hour for on-call. But,
sure.
But I would say that when I first started, I thought, oh yeah, I'll be an on-call advocate, and I'll take one call a month, or maybe I thought a week. But I remember my first shift, I signed up, and it was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday that I signed up for, and I took 9 calls over the course of that weekend. And it was everything ranging from people, a person who just needed emotional support because they hadn't experienced an assault, and it was a while ago, but they just really were having some PTSD and needed to be talked through that, to responding to a sexual assault and spending 3 hours undergoing a sexual assault kit in the ER. And by the way, Grand Forks is actually an expert in domestic violence and sexual assault response. It's pretty cool. We're a national model here and really recognized as an expert because of our coordinated response. Our police department and our Altru are fantastic at coordinating and doing victim-centered care. So,
Wow.
yeah.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a dumb question.
Mm-hmm.
Some might call me an expert at dumb questions.
Some might.
Here's my dumb question. What can somebody like Paul and I do who maybe don't, and by maybe don't, I mean don't volunteer for the CVIC? We're just your average people. Nobody knows. There's no way to tell that somebody's going through something like that.
A lot of the time.
A lot of the time. What can an average person do in an effort to help with domestic violence?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. It's funny. Not funny. Funny is never the right word to use for this.
Mm-hmm.
I said not a lot of people know about my story, and I spoke publicly for the first time about it last year at a CVIC event. But, I have a role within the community where a lot of people see me in one light, but they might not ever see that. They might not ever know that, I came to Grand Forks 8 years ago with 3 garbage bags of clothes and $300 to my name, and that's the only belongings I really had in this world. And throughout that time, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt, and you don't really want to talk publicly about it, which is part of the reason why there's so much stigma, is because you just perpetuate that cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to know, like, okay, you have this friend who just experienced this assault. What's the right way to go about reaching her or him, And I think the best way you could do it is to connect with the agencies that are supporting. And I'm not just saying that because I work at CVIC and it's like donate to CVIC or anything like that. But it's hard to have so many people coming up to you and saying, I heard this happened to you. What a terrible thing. How can I help you? Because in that moment, or in those moments, until you're ready to share your own story, until you're really ready to accept help, you're going to accept it usually from an agency. Myself, I did use an agency in the town that I was coming from. And I think if it wasn't for the help of that agency, I wouldn't be where I am today, to have a lawyer who was there in court with me free of charge when I had no money, to have somebody who said, hey, before you go get your stuff, you really need to contact the police and let them know. That's all stuff maybe I wouldn't have thought about
Absolutely.
Or been strong enough to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say CVIC, especially in Grand Forks, it served, I think, like 2,700 people last year just for safety services.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't include like the prevention and education that they're doing. That's about 15,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
But just those 3,000 people, that's about 5% of our population that's needing services where they're reaching out. So imagine that.
Wow.
It's really sad.
So they have this thing called the Dream Maker Society that I became part of. And I would say everybody should just take a look at that. Like, it's $83 a month. And if you sign up for 5 years, you get to become a Dream Maker, and that provides shelter services. It provides food and clothing and, crisis line services. That's a money is a big help sometimes because it takes a lot to run an organization like that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, not to come full circle for the sake of doing so, but yeah, I guess just trust the people who are good at this stuff and know who they are in the first place. You don't grow up hearing about the CVIC if you don't have, issues in your own family. So yeah, that's good stuff to know.
Become an expert at knowing the experts.
Yeah, why not?
There you go.
There it is.
Expert sleuths. That's what you guys can become.
All thanks to you.
Duh.
Would you give us the when you knight people? Would you give us the?
Would I dub you?
Yeah.
Would I dub you experts?
On trying to find experts.
Yeah, you're expert detectives. I dub thee John and I dub thee Paul. Expert detectives. Wow. Yeah. Wow. You know, if I
already
hadn't
found our first one, and yeah.
if I hadn't stolen your sword last week, I really could have dubbed thee.
Wow, that would
have been great.
She just pulls it out of her pocket. I found it, by the way.
Yeah, thanks for just dropping it off somewhere random.
You're welcome. I felt like
Hugh Brown's sword.
It needed to live its own life. You said I could have it.
I know.
Well, I think that you're probably the expert on dubbing people who desperately need to be called an experts. So
now I
you.
am self-proclaimed.
Okay. Self-proclaimed. Self-proclaimed.
Yeah. The Washington Post will be calling me next week to do a story on dubbing experts, detectives.
Can't wait.
Becca C., thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Paul. Thanks for having me, John.
Was a pleasure.
It's always a delight to see you and speak with you.
Well, my life goal of making you crack on air was accomplished,
Good.
So I feel like an expert in that now.
Well, put your mask back on and get out of here.
Great. I will.
We're sick of you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Becca.